welcome to Chang Media Sports, and in our first video ever, we will be doing a NBA mock draft for the 2022 season. Now, the rankings and the positionings of the teams that we have are as at the conclusion of the regular season, and we'll be definitely doing an updated mock draft once the team lottery positionings have been finalized. So, without further ado, guys, please like and subscribe to the channel. We are a new channel, but aim to get a lot of basketball and NBA content out there. And if it isn't already well known, I am a Detroit Pistons fan. So like a lot of Detroit fans and fans that are in the lottery, there's a lot of eyes in this year's draft. Now, without further ado, let's start with number one. And I have the Houston Rockets picking Jabari Smith. So I think with Jalen Green and Alfred Şengün, Houston Rockets really do have a really strong base and a core and a team to build upon. Now, do I think Kevin Porter Jr. is the point guard of the future? Absolutely not. But at the same time, I do think that Christian Wood is definitely not going to be there. And he dangles and he provides the Houston Rockets with a really strong trade asset. With that being said, when you think of the combination of assets and skills that Jabari Smith has at 6'10", shooting at 40%, he is the best pure shooter in the draft. Has semblance of shot creation. Didn't have the best guards, Auburn, and I don't think he's necessarily going to have that going into a situation such as Houston. And I think Houston is an interesting case study. Unlike last year where you probably had Cade Cunningham as a consensus number one pick, and it was rumored that OKC, Houston, and a lot of teams were willing to give a fair amount to get that number one pick. I think depending on who actually gets the positionings, you're going to see different teams trade up, even trade down, depending. And I think that Jabari Smith makes all the sense in the world. Chet Holmgren was another one that you could really consider at Houston when it comes to fit. But there is a world where you can see, Jalen Green penetrating and kicking out to Smith, and Smith bombing away from three. And while Smith at this early stage doesn't have maybe the advanced shot creation off the dribble skills that you'd like to see from a number one pick, he doesn't need it in Houston. I think the scoring load, or at least the majority of it, will be taken by Jalen Green, and he will really feast away to strong percentages. So number one, I've got the Houston Rockets. In number two, I have the Orlando Magic taking Chet Holmgren. Now, this is an interesting one. The Orlando Magic just have assets stockpiling everywhere. They've got an insane amount of young talent across the board. I mean, they took Jalen Suggs last year, and he had a slow start, and maybe not the start that, maybe not the overall season that you'd want from, your number four pick rather. But Jalen Suggs, Markelle Fultz, Cole Anthony, there's just too much talent from a guard position to actually consider a guard there, I think. And at the same time, you had Wendell Carter Jr., who was amongst, the most productive big men. And I think he goes under the radar as a lot of these lottery teams have really good performing players. Mo Bamba's done really well as well. In the second half of the season, he actually established himself as a stretch big. And I think, interestingly enough, there is a lot of duplication with Mo Bamba and Chet Holmgren, and in an ideal world, they'd probably want an athletic three, but not having this in this particular draft, and being at number two, they take Chet Holmgren. They bank on Chet being able to come into the league and develop over a period of time, and you have that with the stable of bigs. Jonathan Isaac is there. The Orlando Magic have a lot of ways to go here, but I think you've got to swing for upside if you're a number two, and Chet Holmgren presents a unique board of skills that we don't see come often. And I think if you're the Orlando Magic and you don't necessarily have a major glaring positional need, you bank on the upside for Chet Holmgren. Number three, my Detroit Pistons. Now this is an interesting one because the Detroit Pistons have been, it's been well known that they've been pining after Jabari Smith. And I think, if they get the number one pick, it's Smith. The length, the shooting, the age, the synergy you can see with Cade Cunningham, it makes all the sense in the world. However, at number three, Detroit are in an interesting pickle because, they're going to look at Sharp. Shaden Sharp, they're going to look at Jaden Ivey and theoretically, fire and ice, you got these athletic players. You've got some size in the backcourt if you go down Shaden Sharp, who's 6'6". You got, Ja Morant-esque athleticism with Jaden Ivey. And I've seen a lot of mock drafts, picking these, not specifically Shaden, but Jaden Ivey. And Jaden Ivey is, a Donovan Mitchell type talent that Detroit Pistons let go a while back. But anyway, I digress. I think when all is considered, Cade Cunningham needs the ball in his hands to operate at a high level, in my mind. And you definitely want to see where that can take him. And in my mind, I see them taking Paolo Banchero. If they're at number 3, if Jabari's gone, and if Chet's gone, I think it's very hard to look past 6'10", ideal size, shot creation. Essentially, someone in the front court that you can throw the ball in to get a bucket. That level of shot creation is always needed in the NBA. And if you are the Detroit Pistons, you look at March Madness, you see the run that he did, you see his playmaking skills, and you see scoring, dependable scoring in the front court, which I think is needed. They keep Marvin Bagley. He's a good change of pace, a vertical threat. And I think you're able to keep the ball, the majority of the times at least, from the backcourt in Cade Cunningham's hands, which is what it needs to happen if Detroit are to, come into the playoffs. So I've got Detroit taking Paolo Banchero at 3. At 4, I've got my first swinger, my first interesting pick. And I think OKC, if they stay at 4, they'll be very disappointed because if there are glaring holes in their roster, it's in the front court. Any one of Jabari Smith, Chet Holmgren, and Paolo Banchero make all the sense in the world for the Oklahoma City Thunder. And here is where I see them. And this pick is influenced a lot in mine with Sam Presti and just basically his ethos on, stacking talent. I see them taking Jaden Ivey. Now, don't smash me in the comment section. I know it makes absolutely no sense from a fit perspective. But I think in this case, with the upside, the perceived upside that Jaden Ivey has, you take him. You take him. You see what he actually is. And if he is the second coming of Ja Morant, then you've got a 3-headed beast. And that's not even counting Lou Dort, who's, I think, a really strong player. But you're going to trade one of those guys there. And I think when you think about the Oklahoma City Thunder, if they strike out and are not able to get an impact big, which, the top 3 in this draft are really strong, I think they go with the best player available because it just makes all the sense in the world, even if it is a guard. That's personally what I would do. At number 5, the Indiana Pacers made a splash at the trade deadline. They have their backcourt of the future, at least their point guard of the future, in Tyrese Halliburton. And hasn't he come on strong? So from a guard perspective, I don't see them taking Shaden Sharp. I actually see them keeping the guard rotation that they have. But you never know. A wing, a big athletic wing. And to me, Benedict Mathurin has actually jumped AJ Griffin on that pile. And I think, Benedict obviously had a strong run, rather, not an amazing run, in March Madness. And his athleticism to me gets him over the line. His athleticism and, banking on his upside to be able to guard defensively, I think gets him a little of AJ Griffin. It's a bit of a toss of a coin there. At number 6, this is an interesting one too. I don't see them, Portland that is rather, the Portland Trailblazers, trading this pick, but they could. If they were to keep it, I think you go for best player available, and I think you go for Shaden Sharp. Now, Shaden Sharp is going to be an interesting test case. There's not a lot of tape on him. Obviously, he didn't play in college this year. We know what we know about him. 6'6", guard, athletic, moves very well. Just based on those descriptions, a lot of teams are going to take a consideration there. And I think how Shaden, or if Shaden performs, how he performs in workouts is really going to impact his value here. But at 6, I see the Portland Trailblazers taking Shaden Sharp for 2 reasons. One is, Portland are going to go all in with Dame for sure. They're not going to rebuild, they're going to reload. And I think if you're thinking of the reloading scenario, what Shaden Sharp does is he actually allows you to potentially consider not re-signing Anthony Simons. Now, I think, a lot of Portland fans might smash me on that one, but think about it here. With the contract that Anthony is going to commit, it could potentially be used on other positions there if you feel Shaden Sharp is ready for it. Or if you feel there are tools there. And to a degree, they kind of did that with CJ McCollum in terms of drafting CJ McCollum a while back. So I see that as a scenario. For Portland, I actually see a scenario where in Shaden Sharp, they could potentially rebuild around in the event that, they decide that maybe they're not going down the Damian Lillard route. So to me, best player available, and it's an interesting thing saying that Shaden Sharp is the best player available, but it'll be very interesting to see how the reports of his one-on-one workouts look like. So that's an interesting one. I've got the Portland Trailblazers at 6, taking Shaden Sharp. At 7, everyone's favorite team, the Sacramento Kings. Look, there are a lot of holes in this roster, but I think here you also go for best player available, and you can never have enough of wings that shoot at 40%. And I think AJ Griffin slots in over here. You got to think that Harrison Barnes was on the trading block. They have a ready-made replacement in AJ Griffin if they are to take him here. It makes sense. Keegan Murray also makes sense here. I think Rashad Holmes is going to find a new home during the offseason. But eventually, tossed and turned. At 7, I've got the Sacramento Kings taking AJ Griffin. At number 8, the New Orleans Pelicans via the Los Angeles Lakers. And they're currently in the playoffs, and they add to their war chest. I think they take Johnny Davis. Again, best player available. He could be their shooting guard of the future. He adds to a very intriguing backcourt, pretty decent sized backcourt at that. Johnny Davis, New Orleans, and if Zion comes back healthy next year, that's going to be a scary team with the amount of assets that they have. This is an interesting pick. Number 9, I've got the San Antonio Spurs taking Jalen Duren, athletic center, a bit raw, doesn't necessarily have a back to the basket game. I think if you look at San Antonio's roster, for the longest of time, they haven't really had an athletic center or an athletic, positional front court player. The guards, they've got a lot of guards. Dejounte Murray, I can just see, Murray to Duren, the Lob City. It could be a very interesting combination. Adds an injection of youth in the San Antonio Spurs, and with Popovich over there, I think he can get, Jalen probably to the best version of what Jalen Duren has. And for the final pick, in number 10, I've got the Washington Wizards taking Keegan Murray. Now, this is quite a drop for Keegan Murray, and I think, this is an interesting draft where I think fit really will play a big aspect in terms of who chooses what. So I'm really interested to see what that happens. And in Keegan Murray, Washington has a productive, power forward player. Don't get me wrong. Look, they've got Denny Advia, they've got Rui Hachimura. This is talent acquisition for the Washington Wizards. Ty Washington to me was another individual there. And this to me rounds out the top 10 for the NBA 2022 mock draft based on fit, based on the current standings before the actual draft positionings. What do you guys think? Do you think I've got it wrong? If your team is in the draft, who do you want picked for your particular team? Leave some comments below, guys. Like and subscribe to the channel. We're a new channel, but we aim to get you informational content on the NBA. And, we hope to see you soon.